Hello rockstars, how's everyone going? Guys, in today's video we are going to talk about what makes a commander great, as in we have a lot of commanders in the game, but then it seems like most of us prefers to use certain commanders who has become meta, and there's a reason why they have become meta. Now we know the commander's name, we probably kind of know why we like them. Now what we want to do in this video is kind of try to assess, as in our understanding of why these commanders are great, what do they have in similarities amongst themselves, and maybe that could be like a guideline for us for our future investments as well. So let's talk about the commanders that I think that are being used as meta at the moment. Whoever video you're looking at now, or whoever you speak with in terms of in terms of your friend circle within Rise of Kingdoms, your kingdom or whatever, everyone's probably going to recommend certain commanders. So you're most likely going to have there Nevsky and XY and Boudica and Guan, Scipio. Some may recommend Trajan as well, and then maybe William. Some will recommend Harold. So you kind of get what I'm trying to do here. Scipio obviously, in most cases YG as well. So, and obviously Joan. So you kind of get what we're talking about here, right? Like, what are the commanders that are very, very popular? By the way, Tomiris is quite popular as well. Out of the big players that we review in terms of their commanders and equipment, we did review like 15 top players with 15 billion plus KP, while some of them with 30 billion plus KP. But anyways, so out of all these big players, who are from different KDs, by the way. So we got 1VJST, 1254, 1556, players for 1093, players from, all over the big kingdoms, 1093 there as well. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that out of those players, at least 6 out of 10 actually use Tomiris. So we probably should start counting Tomiris in one of those top categories as well. And then it may not be limited to just Tomiris. It may include, in the near future, it may include Sargon as well. Because the day we are making the video, Sargon isn't out yet. He's probably going to come out next week. But either way, the topic is Sargon and Tomiris does have some similarities in terms of the debuff they do. There are some differences, but we did a whole separate video about Tomiris and Sargon, so not going into the details. So again, today's topic is kind of trying to look into what are the things that are making them great. Now, the first thing that came to my mind was, well, they gotta do AoE, right? Now, is that the case? Let's have a think about it. So out of the bigger sort of commanders, yes, most of them actually does AoE. So Guan does AoE, XY does AoE in terms of popular commanders, I mean, and then Harold has a version of an AoE as well, and then Scipio obviously does AoE, YSG definitely does, so Joan does as well. So AoE is a big factor. So AoE, I would say that most of the commanders that we are talking about, the requirement would be they need to do AoE. Now that brings us to the second factor. How did these two commanders become meta without doing AoE? So what do they have that's valued as much as AoE, or maybe, in some cases more? Because a lot of people would tell you that Boudica is the best commander in terms of archers. Now, a lot of people will actually say that Joan is the best, but Nevsky shouldn't be too far away from Joan, probably on the say, at least both of them are, top tier. So Nevsky is there as well. So how did the top cavalry, one of the top cavalry commanders, one of the top archer commanders without AoE become top? Well, they got something similar. Now, it doesn't read out exactly the same when you look at the skills, but technically it's quite similar. So if you look at what Boudica does on her first skill, have a read of it. What does it say? Other than the single damage factor thing, it says increases the target's skill damage taken by 35% and reduces their march speed by 30% for 3 seconds. Now, the march speed I read out, but that's not the main factor. I mean, the march speed reduction is an added bonus. So you're telling the target, you stand there and I'm going to do more damage, right? I mean, not stand there, but you don't run away and you don't run away fast, and I'll do more damage on you. But anyways, so this extra damage taken thing. Now, you know how we talked about Tomiris and Sargon? Now, Tomiris and Sargon doesn't do as much damage as Boudica, which is why they're not meta like Boudica is, but then the concept is similar, debuffing the target so that the target takes more damage. Now the target, it doesn't say the target takes more damage only from this march. If Boudica's skill, the first skill, if it said that the target will take more damage from Boudica, in which case it will read out Boudica does 35% more skill damage, then it wouldn't make her great. So increased skill damage on yourself doesn't make the skill as great. What makes it top or OP or meta is, or game changer, is the fact that every other person hitting every other march, whether it be your march, your allies march, your kingdom mates march, whichever, your grandma's march, whoever march is hitting the target is going to do 35% more damage. Skill damage. I mean, skill damage taken increased by the target. So the way Boudica does the debuff is on the target, not only increasing her in a way increasing everyone else's skill damage. So this is why she is great. Now I was trying to say that Nevsky kind of does something similar. Right now Nevsky's skill doesn't read anything like that. So what does Nevsky's skill actually say? It says it does a single target damage, alright. Inflicts, the next part, inflicts a defense reduction debuff for 3 seconds. Defense reduction equal to number of, it's kind of written wrong. So basically number of troops surrounding the target into 15, maximum 3 enemies. So basically what it says is, if you're swarming, forget about your kingdom, even if you're swarming a target with Nevsky along with your other marches, there is a 45% defense reduction. That's what this basically says. So what that means is, as much as Nevsky is not making the target take more damage through increasing their damage taken, by reducing their defense, he's kind of creating the same situation. So if the defense is reduced, then that target is taking a lot of damage from all sources. So basically helping a target take more damage from all sources is the key to these two. Now, somehow debuffing the target, that's the bottom line we're going to take out of it. So somehow debuffing the target. So if you have AoE, great. If you don't have AoE, you have to have a strong skill damage yourself on a single target. On top of that, you got to debuff somehow the enemy. That's what we're taking out of these commanders that we looked at, right? Now XY kind of does something similar. He does have AoE, that's the bonus. He does have a defense reduction as well, which is great. He increases his skill damage and all that, which is great. So that's all good. Now when it comes to Guan, he has this thing where he silences as well. Now there are a few other commanders that does silence, but then none of them has the other things kind of goes with it. Massive damage factor with a silence. And now silence for 3 seconds means the commanders that he's targeting, the 3, they're not going to do anything for 3 seconds. They're just going to sit there and take your skill damage, which is great. I mean, they can walk away, but silence means they can't reply with a skill of their own. So that's that. So these are the top sort of commanders that we're looking at. So we're talking about the skills. So not necessarily just doing an AoE is good enough, right? So initially we're saying first it has to be AoE, but it's not limited to just an AoE. The AoE has to be powerful. On top of the AoE, it has to have some sort of utility. So in Guan's case, it has the silence. In XY's case, it has the defense reduction. And then if you keep kind of scrolling down, now this is a rare one. He's not necessarily a meta commander, to be honest, not at least amongst the top players, but then we will still talk about him in a way, not in the same class as the others, but then what he does is he has that counter attack damage, 40% counter attack damage, which is the highest in the game. So when he's targeted, he's doing a lot of damage. So that's, you know, one way to go about it. But then he's not necessarily meta, he's just almost there, but not really. Now coming down to Scipio, the true meta, what does he have? So in terms of AoE, he obviously has the AoE, massive AoE and all that. He does give himself some health as well. Now health is good. Now out of the commanders that we talked about earlier, Guan and XY doesn't boost their own health or defense by any means, which is kind of bad. Which is why a lot of people actually like over XY, like Joan and Nevsky, and a lot of people over Guan probably like Scipio, and that has something to do with the tankiness. So it does reduce enemies' health, but not just there, he gives himself health as well. So this is the one I was talking about. He gives himself health, and the Nevsky does give himself cavalry defense bonus over here as well. So that does give him a little bit of a tankiness there. Cavalry health bonus on this skill as well. So that's definitely tankiness. Now Boudica probably doesn't give health. Boudica does give defense, yes, and then at the same time she does have some skill damage taken reduction. So not necessarily these skills, I probably shouldn't say making them tanky, but it's actually making them not melt as fast. That's what I would say. So by having these skills, you're kind of making sure that by taking AoE in the field yourself, you're not gonna die just out of the AoE. So what it makes sure is, I mean, if you're targeted, obviously you're gonna die. It doesn't matter who you take out, but then without being targeted, you're not gonna die easy, and there's that little bit of a healing as well. So in terms of top commanders, so these guys, they're top, but then they're not the same level of top as these two in terms of, you know, what most people actually use, right? So then the top, if I want to say top, then it's probably more Nevsky and Boudica, and that's to do with how they have those a little bit of a tankiness as well. Now going along the same line, we haven't forgotten about William, by the way. We will come back to William, but then we wanted to talk about Scipio first. So Scipio again does that tankiness and then does an area of effect damage with a lot of damage factor, reduces enemies' health, which is a good debuff, increases his own health, and then in the end there is a way he can grow rage 30% faster, but then the enemy has to be silenced, and you know who is going to do the silencing, right? That's going to be Guan, and which is why more so than Guan being dependent on Scipio, it's the other way around. Scipio is more dependent on Guan, which is why I kind of rate Guan a little higher, but then both of them top tier. So usually you would pair them together. Doesn't have to be paired together though, so Guan can pick it up even if Scipio is, you know, Scipio can still pick up the rage increase even if Guan is not in the same match, because Guan silencing the enemy and him hitting the same enemy, he will pick it up. But either way, it's just probably better to pair them together. Moving on, and then who else do we want to talk about? Oh, we still got to talk about Joan and William. So Joan, let's have a look at what Joan does. So again, she does that massive damage, 3 targets, but on top of that, she's actually going to restore rage, and she's gonna help 2 of the allies do more damage. So basically she is making the target take more damage, right? And the additional rage gain is also for the allies as well, the 2 allies, not necessarily just you. Other than that, her sports skill will allow her to cast this first skill every now and then, 10%, and then you get 10% cavalry health as well. So a little bit of a tankiness there and more damage through the last skill. So basically, she has everything that you would be looking for. Increases rage, AoE, massive damage, somehow debuffs the enemy or buffs your own group. So you kind of need all of those things. And then if you look at William at a lower scale kind of does all of that. So if you look at this skill of William, he kind of has a weird AoE. So it's not a straight, you know, circular AoE. It's actually a straight AoE, like a, you know, rectangular shaped AoE that he does, I think. So what he does is, when he's hitting multiple targets, you can get defense, and then you can get more rage as well. Your nearby troops gain rage as well, up to 5. So basically, he does give a few of those bonuses, but there's a lot of ifs and buts, whereas with Joan, you just get it. No buts there, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say here is, and this is why Joan is obviously better than William. So overall, when you take into account the best of the best commanders, what are you looking at? Yes, there are two exceptions, but those two exceptions to AoE, those two exceptions has something extremely useful, as in surrounding an enemy and making him take more damage. And it doesn't even need surround, like, you know, if she hits the enemy and then you hit the enemy takes more damage. So basically, if you have a massive damage factor single target, you can overlook the AoE a little bit, but preferably in future commander requirements, when you want to move out of or grow out of your current commanders, new commanders, these are the things you're going to be looking for. They have to have AoE. They have to have some sort of a debuff on the enemy, and preferably on top of that, they have to have a little bit of a tankiness somewhere. So they need to have some stat boosts around health or around defense or something like that. And again, preferably take away something from the enemy, health or defense or something like that. Because if you're not fulfilling all of those categories, then obviously the new commander is not going to be that great, and you can't replace the existing commanders that you're using. Now, where does that leave these two commanders then? The two new that's coming out, right? Sargon and Tariq. Now Tariq, I don't see AoE here, right? So there's no AoE. There's no defense bonus here. There's a little bit of a, well, 30% is pretty good, so he does have, but it's only when attacking cities and strongholds. So, you know, open field, probably not. It does reduce the target's rage, so that's not bad. And that's pretty much it. So unless there's something secret going on with the Tariq that hasn't been explained over here, I don't see why I would even consider using him in the field. So do you kind of see my point? So if I go by what makes a commander great, which is what we got out of analyzing the commanders that we're using, I don't see Tariq kind of, you know, fulfilling that. But then when the commander comes out, there could be like some sort of secret things going on here which is not explained well enough, and he could be great, but at this stage I can't see how. When it comes to Sargon, he doesn't necessarily fit the bill of those commanders that are great either, but then we still use Tomiris. Tomiris doesn't fit all of that, right? Tomiris just feels one of them, where Tomiris makes the target take a lot of skill damage. Now this guy kind of does that as well. Not on his first skill is horrible, but then in the second skill he does. So what he does is, he does give infantry health, so he's already a little bit better. But then what he does is, he, just like Tomiris' poison, he does that odd thing where the target takes more damage, not just from you, from everyone. So that's the saving grace. Now the other skills are good. Again, we're not going to talk about all of that. We did talk about them in other skills. So Sargon, in a way, in the Tomiris category, I can consider using him. Oh my god, I forgot to talk about him. He's one of the bigger crowd favorites. Now he's actually pretty good. Now what he does, he doesn't have all those other things, but his damage factor is so massive, 2500 up to 3 targets, which is why he's kind of, you know, good even as a secondary. He does a lot of damage, but then he's probably not, and he does have some march speed, but and he does do some skill damage bonus. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is, he's probably not as popular as the other ones, but then if he didn't have the AoE, you wouldn't be using him at all. That's the point I'm trying to make. So single target commanders, unless they have something exceptional going on for them, you can't use them for open field. And whenever I'm talking, I'm usually talking about open field, by the way, not rally or garrison, because I'm kind of not doing rally or garrison either. So guys, in summary, I think we did cover what are the things you want, or what are the things that makes a commander great, things that you want to look out for. AoE, debuff the enemy to take more damage, take away their defense or take away their health, add the defense or health to yourself, and on top of that, if you want to be the greatest of the greatest, you kind of have to boost yourself with defense and or health, and maybe something to do with rage as well. Either reduce the enemy's rage or you increase your own rage. Now these are the factors that probably separate the good commanders from the best commanders. So these are the skills that or traits that you should probably look for when deciding on your next investment. Now again, I rambled on for a while, but I hope you guys got something out of it. And if you did, then please drop a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.